Hi, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to share today. I don't remember when and why I started to want to know more about God and religion, but at 14 years old, I somehow ended up in Bible studies with family members that were Jehovah's Witnesses. These studies created a lot of confusion in me about what I believed in. I grew up Catholic, and I was being told that my Catholic religion was wrong. But the most special people in my life were Catholic. I learned about God through Catholic upbringing, and my Catholic grandmother is the one that taught me to pray. So how could this be wrong? And what made Jehovah's Witnesses' faith right? I was really confused, and I felt like an important piece of my life was wrong all this time. That night, I prayed the most sincere and desperate prayer my 14-year-old self could have made. With tears in my eyes, I asked, God, I just want to know the truth. It may have been a week later after that prayer that I woke up on a Sunday morning and my older brother wasn't home. A friend from school had invited him to church. I didn't consider my brother one to like church, so this piqued my interest. He started to make a lot of changes in his life. At that time, I didn't understand why and what was making him change. I had to see what he was doing. I went to church with him. I was so amazed to see kids my age reading the Bible, taking notes, singing church songs, engaged in a lesson, and being so kind to one another and so nice to me. A bunch of 13, 14, 15-year-olds loved God, and I could see it. They asked me to study the Bible, so I said yes. Every study we did, God was answering that heartfelt prayer that I did that night. I learned what it means to be a disciple. I learned about the cross and Jesus. I had heard the story about Jesus' crucifixion before, but up to that time, it was never a personal thing. The medical account that was read to me during one of my studies made the crucifixion very real. I learned that Jesus died for me, that he died for every lie I told my parents and to others, for all the mean thoughts I had, for every curse word that came out my mouth. Every time I disobeyed my parents, Jesus was crucified all over again, and this time it was because of me. God started showing me the truth through the scriptures. I learned that although I was considered a relatively good kid with not a lot of life experience, I was still a sinner, like it says in Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. I was just a kid who needed God's grace and Jesus just as much as the next person. It didn't matter what religion I grew up with or what religion was right. Jesus dying for me was the only truth I needed to hear. I was baptized on February 20th, 1995. From there, thank you. From there, I dedicated my life to God's purpose. I shared my faith. I studied the Bible with my friends. I lost some friends because of my faith and my new convictions. But like many of you know, once you get baptized, repentance doesn't end there. After 6 years of being a faithful disciple, I allowed my heart to grow cold and distant. I allowed bitterness and anger to take over. Because I was angry and disappointed at people, I chose to leave the church. I told myself I was only leaving the church, not God. So I continued my Bible reading for a few months, but that slowly started to fade away. I was now enticed by the world and by what I wanted, by my emotions, and I allowed Satan to get a foothold. During this time, I got married. Although it was a happy time, it was not a pure and godly relationship, so it didn't start the way God intended. And I knew this, but fell into my worldly desires anyway. Sorry. The reality of life without God really set in, and I started to feel consequences of the sins I had committed after I left God. I no longer felt the freedom that you feel with Christ. I no longer felt God's grace and that he freely gives. Our marriage started to suffer. Challenges I never thought I was experiencing. My marriage was in shambles. I became a mom also, so the fear of having my kids grow up in single-parent households helped me stay in my marriage, so I kept trying. But all our efforts were not working. Our relationship was deteriorating. For a long time, I told myself I deserved the pain and hardship that I was experiencing for leaving God and disobeying him. I was far from the truth that I had so earnestly prayed for that one day. After 5 years of trying to make it work, we agreed we needed God in our marriage. I knew the truth and I needed it. We tried searching for God at different churches, but we didn't have good experiences. We actually thought we found a couple at a church near our home that could help us in our marriage, but I think we scared them away with all how open and vulnerable we were with our lives. We were desperate to find help. We humbled out and contacted the church that we were both part of so many years ago. In the summer of 2008, after 7 years being away, I restored my relationship with God. But it took about 9 additional years after that to really restore my marriage. We had a lot of damage that we incurred all those years. And on June 3rd, 2017, we renewed our vows, we had a wedding, and we decided to have a godly marriage. This past October, we actually celebrated 20 years of marriage, so there is hope in Jesus. I have seen Romans 8:28 play out in my life. God does work for the good of those who love him. I want to encourage our youth, our teen ministry, that life is better with God in it. If you feel like you have a sheltered life, reality comes eventually. You are better off having God as your support in a church family to help you go through it, through life and not be alone. If you lean on the world, that is fickle and unstable. Remember, we will reap our consequences for all of our decisions, good or bad. To those who have left the faith, I encourage you to look back as to why you became a disciple in the first place and restore your relationship with God. He is waiting and will accept you just like he did with me. And to all the disciples here, I want to encourage you to continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, as Philippians 2:12 says. Thank you.